I'm the Grumpy Scot, heading into Shelby Oaks, where YouTube critic Chris Stuckmann, $1 million Kickstarter dream, proves that reviewing film is easier than making it. Tell me about it. So what did $1 million buy you? A derivative, poorly paced mess that proves crowdfunding success and filmmaking talent are two very, very different things. That's why I'm about to explain exactly why Chris Stuckmann should have stayed behind the camera reviewing movies instead of making them. Shelby Oaks became the most funded horror project in Kickstarter with over $1 million raised. With Flanagan producing and Neon distributing, this should have slayed. Instead, it's a masterclass in why critics should stay critical. Let's be fair, Shelby Oaks starts decently enough. We get a mockumentary-style opening about the paranormal paranoids, a group of YouTube ghost hunters, Blair Witch wannabes who disappear while investigating the abandoned town of Shelby Oaks. Riley Brennan and her crew vanish in 2008. 3 bodies are found mangled, but Riley's remains missing. 12 years later, time for a sequel or just plot padding? Mia, her sister, is still hunting answers. And this setup works. The found footage elements have genuine unease, there's mystery, and the documentary framing gives it authenticity. Problem is, Stuckmann then abandons this approach after about 15 minutes and pivots to traditional filmmaking. And that's when the wheels start to come off this bus, and this bus then plummets into a ravine filled with narrative incoherence, much like this review. The transition from grainy atmospheric found footage to over-polished digital cinematography kills any tension stone dead that the film might have built. It's like watching Blair Witch Project suddenly turn into a CW supernatural drama halfway through. The visual language that created dread, those unsettling background figures you glimpse in grainy video, completely gone, totally evaporate. Let's talk about Mia, our protagonist. Camille Sullivan does her best with material that makes her character behave like she's had a lobotomy. When a blood-soaked stranger shows up at her door, hands her a tape and immediately shoots himself in the head, what does Mia do? Well, what any woman would do. She call the police? No. She steals the tape, watches it privately, and wanders around with the man's blood and brains still on her face for an inexplicable amount of time. This isn't shock and trauma, this is contrived plot mechanics, forcing a character to make idiotic decisions so the story can happen. Any sane person would have called 911, washed their face and handed the tape to the authorities. In real life, I'd be cuffing someone by now, but instead we're watching plot armour in action. Imagine that though. We'd have a 20-minute short where the police actually investigate and Mia and Riley get therapy. The script is littered with these logic-defying moments. Mia spends 12 years obsessing over her sister's disappearance, but apparently never thought to thoroughly investigate the abandoned prison and amusement park on her doorstep where Riley literally filmed the last footage. That's like losing your keys in the living room and spending a decade searching Antarctica. Is that a logic fail or genius? Let me know in the comments. And the supporting characters, they're not characters, they're exposition delivery systems, one-dimensional placeholders who exist solely to dump information and then disappear from the narrative. You don't care about them, you don't hate them, they just exist in the worst possible space of complete audience indifference. Take the Warden, Keith David, normally choose scenery, but his big reveal here? Just an info spew about the riot before vanishing like bad CGI with his paycheck. Let's address the actual horror elements. And there are a lot. Shelby Oaks doesn't just borrow tropes, it raids a bargain bin of every 90s to now chiller and assembles them like a drunk Jenga tower. Take the demonic symbols Mia finds in Riley's old book, pentagrams and occult scribbles straight out of a Dungeons and Dragons starter kit. But when she uncovers them in the creepy cabin cellar later, they're just wallpaper for a botched ritual that explains zilch about the town's decay. No payoff here, no rules, just lazy set dressing pretending to be lore. Next, in the cliché fest, we have the hellhounds with glowing eyes, a nod to every bargain basement sinister wannabe. We first spot one as a flickering reflection in Mia's TV after she watches the recovered tape. Those red orbs staring like faulty Christmas lights. Eerie setup, right? But when it actually attacks her in the abandoned prison, it's a bit blurry off-screen snarl that ends with Mia stumbling away unscathed, more annoyed than terrified. It's the Omen on a budget, without the bite, literally. Next, in the cliché fest, and don't get me started on the parasitic incubi angle with Tarion the Demon. This shadowy figure lurking since the sister's childhood night terrors. Flashbacks show young Riley chatting to a man at her window, and later we learn Tarion's been puppeteering Wilson Miles, the suicide stranger, to breed their cursed infant via ritual assault on Riley. Harrowing on paper, but the reveal lands like a wet fart in Norma's dimly lit shack, where the milky-eyed old witch, Miles's mum, sacrifices herself over the baby without building any dread. It's trying for Hereditary's family curse vibes, but skips the emotional gut punch for exposition dump. Next in the cliché fest, the ending that explains less than a politician's promise. The hellhound pack circling the house in the finale, mentally ill prisoners, the riot backstory, a milky-eyed witch with secrets, Norma spouting vague demonic babble before her exit, and Tarion himself, a promise of Big Bad, who's mostly off-screen whispers and puppet master hints, never earning his hype. It's not a cohesive vision. It's a grab bag of better horror films mashed together without understanding what made any of them work, like Blair Witch's Woods, minus the isolation terror, or the Ring's video curse, without the inevitability. The film desperately wants to be that mix, but it's more like watching someone's Wikipedia summary acted out by extras who forgot the lines. Nothing's properly explained. Why 12 years to have a baby? Beyond a queasy desire and bloodline hook, what's the actual mythology? Tiny amusement park massacre to the prison riot? Why demons and hellhounds when a grounded stalker tale might have sufficed? Stuckmann hurls supernatural slop at the screen, hoping something sticks. It all slides off like lard on Teflon. And the pacing, good lord, the pacing. In 91 minutes, Shelby Oaks feels like 3 hours of Maya wandering fog-shrouded ruins, staring at shadows and shots so dark you're left squinting like it's blackout drill. Did the lighting budget vanish into Kickstarter swag bags? The cinematography gets praised for its coppery hue and sophisticated night shoots. Translate that to too bloody dark to care. Horror works in daylight too. Ask Midsommar or The Wicker Man. This night-obsessed abandoned location fetish is lazy filmmaking dressed as atmosphere, killing tension faster than a Demon's Bad sequel. Then, after this time soak, this distortion reality field, we arrive at the ending, which is less a conclusion and more the film just giving up. After all this build-up, all this mystery, all this searching, we get nothing.
What's the show about? It's about nothing.
Nothing remotely satisfying. The supernatural elements remain unexplained. Character arcs go nowhere, and you're left wondering what the point of this journey was. Stuckmann seems to think ambiguity equals sophistication. Newsflash, it doesn't. Ambiguity works when you've built a coherent world with established rules that you then cleverly subvert or leave open to interpretation. But you can't be ambiguous about things you never bothered to explain in the first place. That's not mysterious. That's incomplete. The film wants to be a slow burn, atmospheric chiller, but slow burn requires you to be building towards something. Shelby Oaks just burns slowly, in circles, until it runs out of fuel and sputters out. There's no payoff, no earned emotional beats, no satisfying resolution to any plot thread. Compare this to something like The Autopsy of Jane Doe or Hell House, films that understood how to structure found footage and supernatural horror that earn their scales through coherent mythology and logical character decisions that build to climaxes that feel inevitable yet surprising. Shelby Oaks has none of that craftsmanship. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Chris Stuckmann has watched thousands of films and can articulate what works and doesn't work in cinema. But watching films and making films are entirely different skill sets. It's like the difference between being a food critic and being a chef. You can have refined taste and still burn water. The most damning thing about Shelby Oaks is it makes amateur mistakes that Stuckmann himself would have roasted in a review.
Sitting through this was terrible. It was so boring and filled with such potential.
Inconsistent character behaviour? Check. Poor pacing? Check. The narrative plot lifted from better films? Check. Abandoning your strongest visual approach for generic coverage? Check. This film falls on the exact criteria that Stuckmann spent years using to evaluate other people's work. And look, I respect his ambition, raising over $1 million on Kickstarter, getting Mike Flanagan involved, securing theatrical distribution through Neon. That's impressive. But none of that matters if the final product is a poorly constructed hodgepodge of horror tropes without the skill to execute them.
Well, I saw it, and it was really fucking bad.
Shelby Oaks is a textbook example of crowdfunding success not equaling artistic achievement. It's derivative when it should be original, sluggish when it should be tense, and confusing when it should be compelling. Camille Sullivan tries her best. The initial found footage concept has potential, and some individual shots look decent, but atmosphere without narrative coherence is just fog. Stuckmann should have stuck at being a critic, but he was bold and played the next card. Now you can't fault him for that. Unfortunately, he went bust on this movie. I'm giving it 3 out of 10.
I like supporting independent films, especially indie horror. I think indie horror filmmakers can do some really great things, and most of them are doing things way better than mainstream horror filmmakers are. In this case, this was a film that had good intentions, but was filled with some of the worst performances of the year, and some truly awful special effects, and a story that seemed like it was sewn together really quickly by taking a bunch of other parts from other films and mashing them all into one.
If you enjoyed listening to me tear into overhyped horror, you know what to do. If you want more on endings that leave you questioning reality, or the director's sanity for that point, check my Ninth Gate review. I'm the Grumpy Scot, reminding you, $1 million on Mike Flanagan can't fix a fundamentally broken script. I'm great.